So our topic today is learning to believe, and it's such a interesting topic because we can think that we believe in certain aspects of who we are, right? We kind of create an idea of who we are by a combination of all the beliefs that we've carried through a lifetime. And some of those beliefs, though, have created a sense of a false self, not a real self. And Ernest Holmes has such, I'll keep referring to Ernest Holmes, the founder of our teaching. Some of the things that he has to say, he is so strong on this idea of what to believe. And I had this really good idea of copying everything instead of bringing all my big books up here. And so I will be fluttering through piles of papers, and this isn't working for me either. But I'll give myself some time here, learning to believe in myself as I flutter through papers. So I know this one about the false self, because I can start my day and say, I can look in the mirror and say, you're good enough, you're going to go out there. And then I get here and I have my false self with the yipes, and I start dropping papers and fluttering through my personality. But isn't that the way? Isn't that the way we just get through and we're forgiving to one another? So Ernest Holmes, in his powerful words, here we go. Where's the book, Okay, let me just now mix them all up. Are you ready for it? Because it's going to be really good. Here we go. Let us again briefly go over what it is, what one must do. Okay. We must first of all believe. We must first of all believe. The supposition is that the reader already believes, or he would not be studying thus far. Why must we believe? Okay, remember I asked you in your meditation, what do you believe? Because God is belief. God is belief, and belief is law. We speak a lot in this teaching about love and law. The law is, it is done unto you as you believe. And as soon as you can deeply settle that simple statement, every faith path turns to that truth and asks of you to deeply believe in that one truth. It is done unto you as you believe. God is belief, and belief is law, and the law produces form in substance. So I love this. When Jesus explained this to his disciples, that they had failed to heal because of a lack of faith, they protested that they did have faith in God. I love it. They were arguing back with Jesus. They did have faith in God, and Jesus explained to them that this was insufficient. They must have the faith of God. So in your beliefs, they must be filled with the faith of God. That's the difference about this teaching. We speak of God, we point to God, we have a deep understanding of the truth of God, but then we ask you to take that one step deeper into your personal life. The faith of God is very different from a faith in God. The faith of God is God, and somewhere along the line of our spiritual evolution, this transition will gradually take place, where we will cease having faith in and shall have the faith of. Having the faith of. Always in such a degree as this happens, a demonstration takes place. We must believe because God is belief. The physical universe is built out of belief, faith, belief, acceptance, and conviction. Now there's some key words there. You can say, well, I believe in love, and I believe in these things, but how much of this belief are you going to accept into the depth of your being? It's believing and it's accepting. It's accepting because there is this gift of the one. You can shift all of your attention into that absolute knowing that the gifts of the One are bestowed upon you with every breath, every moment you wake up. And if you were empty of yesterday, empty of all the impressions that built who you were today, if you could empty of all that and just enter the sanctuary of your soul, accept that grace of God flowing through you as you, it is done unto you as you believe. Isn't that comforting? Doesn't that make you feel like you have a lot more options in life? But you know what I find? We tend to take on kind of a Eeyore attitude about it. You know who Eeyore is? Well, it's not going to work for me. I believe it for them, but not for me. And I recognized as I was preparing this talk this week that I have had an Eeyore consciousness, science of mind consciousness. Because I can sit with an absolute knowing for each and every one of you. I have such acceptance of the truth for you. And when it comes into my own being, I have to do the work. I have to do the work. I have to clear the way and have this deep acceptance that yes, indeed, God flows through me, yes, me too, as me, flowing through me as a conduit of that truth. So it is done unto me as I believe, and what do I believe? And I spent the last weekend at Ananda with a women's retreat, and my whole intention when I went there was driving home the idea of our soul, of our center, of that place, that aspect in each one of us, that which always, always knows for you. It's what brought you here today. It is what stirred you in your awakening. To come gather in consciousness, to remember this truth, to establish a truth in your beliefs that is so powerful and so strong and so filled with love and assurance that you make a difference in your life and you make a difference in the world. And it boils down to, and for many, many years, there was that studying going on, and I would get to that place in Scripture and in reading, and it would say, I am. And I'd turn the page, I am what? I am. I am. I am what? Have you ever come across that Scripture? I am. I am, and then we want to fill in the blank with, well, finish the sentence, God. No, it just is that I am. And when you show up in that I am state, all potentiality, all possibilities, all love flows through you because you just are showing up as I am. And then when you're in that I am state, you are absolutely the conduit, the one, the vehicle that God can move through and change all things. As much as we believe will be done unto us. As much as we can believe will be done unto us. So I share with you two short stories. One of them is this little idea from Anthony DeMello called The Formula. The mystic was back from the desert. Tell us, they said, what God is like. But how could he ever tell them what he had experienced in his heart? Can God be put into words? He finally gave them a formula so inaccurate, so inadequate, but just in hopes that some of them would be tempted to experience it for themselves. See, it's a mystery. They seized upon the formula. They made it a sacred text. They imposed it on others as a holy belief. They went to great pains to spread it in foreign lands. Some even gave their lives for it. The mystic was sad. It might have been better if he said nothing. That gives you a story to think about. The formula. You see, every mystic, every master teacher has spoken with this conviction that it is a mystery. It is something that you must find within your own self. It must be your belief. It must be yours. I can stand up here and flutter through my papers and change my story and move through my words, but it must be a belief that you deeply accept. Ernest Holmes says there's a power that can help us overcome every problem and every difficulty. There is a key within our own mind that makes it possible for us to use the power for good. This good that exists in the universe, Ernest Holmes says, we are because we were first free. You see, we first were just born with this innocence, with this soul. And you know, when you look at that newborn, that soul is so pure, right? And you just look at that and you smile because the soul's just looking back at you and in that little infant saying, I am. I am. And you smile upon that innocence and you remember, your soul remembers that you are that innocence, that sweetness, that power. And it's a power of good. And this power of good, when we recognize and allow ourselves to hold that one belief that there's a power in this universe and that power is used for only good, no matter what comes our way, we can quickly turn to that truth, turn to that anchor of belief in ourselves, saying, this too, I know a good is unfolding here. And nothing rocks us from that place of strength and conviction within ourselves. This power that binds us is the only power of the universe that can free us. These are words of Ernest Holmes. It is done unto you as you believe. It's a spiritual power. It's not an egotistical power. It's not an arrogant power. It's not a personality power. It's not a charisma. It's a spiritual power. And it breathes through each and every one of us. We need to work in our practices to get rid of everything that's in the way of that one power. Because I remind you again, it's done unto you as you believe, and it's done unto you as you believe and as much as you can accept. We're not separate. We're not separate from the faith and everyday living. Do you really believe there's a power of good? I want to ask you that now. Do you really believe that there is a power for good? Because if you don't, I just invite you into a practice to really soul search that, to allow your spiritual work to point to that, to look for more love, more good, more light, more joy into all that you are living. Ernest Holmes says, faith is not something that is separate from us. It is a way of thinking. It is an acceptance of this life and of this good. Something in us does know the way. I know you feel that. I know you feel that. I can feel it in the presence. I can feel it in the moment that we ask you to turn within and to join that place inside of you of stillness and silence. Something in us does know the way. We feel it, but we don't always let ourselves live up to it because we're so used to our false self. And the ideas of the false self, every time we study a spiritual path, it's continuing to point us. Every New Thought writer keeps asking you to please look back at who you are and what you've developed inside of yourself. Stephen Levine says, we are constantly building a new image of ourselves and wondering what's next. We have allowed ourselves very little space for not knowing. Very seldom do we have the wisdom not to know, to lay the mind open to a deeper understanding. And when a confusion will occur in the mind, we identify with it, and then we say, we're confused. You know, the false self, the self that we've become so accustomed to, it's such a companion. We wake up with it every day and we start to decorate it with clothes and do whatever we do. But is it real? I ask yourself, am I showing up as my real self here? Or am I so conditioned to be ready to react and judge to whatever I see on TV, to whatever somebody says to me that I didn't expect? It's just asking you to deeply look into these qualities. When confusion occurs in my mind, we identify with it and we say we're confused. And then we hold on to it. Confusion arises when we fight against our not knowing. which experiences each moment afresh without preconceptions or expectations. We are so full of ways of seeing and ideas of how things should be that we leave no room for any wisdom to arise. You know, the Zen practice is always arriving with no mind, to have that no mind, to allow your meditation to be filled with that aspect of just sitting in practice and letting everything still. Let everything just be. And I know there's such an angst about how we live when we want to just name something so we can understand it. A few weeks ago, I had, out of nowhere, it was late at night, and I woke up with a pain, and many of you know that I'm a nurse, and so I thought, well, what's that pain? Where'd that pain come from? I've had that pain before. I never had a pain over here. What's that? What's here? And so I started going through trying to name it so I could go back to sleep. But no, I had to name it like life-threatening things. I think I'm having a ruptured aortic aneurysm. I'm pretty sure of it. No, perhaps it is a heart attack and it's just manifesting down low here. Oh my gosh, it hurts so much, and Charlie's not in town, and I'm going to die alone right here. And I went through this whole thing trying to name it instead of just being with the fact that I was a little bit uncomfortable. And then, but I didn't just drop it there. It went away, and I woke up in the morning and I had to complain to everybody to try to name it. And we all tried to name what it was that I had. And then the next night I thought, oh, I hope I don't have whatever I don't know I had again. And so whatever I didn't know I had turned into the flu. And so I'm thinking, no, it can't be the flu. It's too miserable. It's beyond that. And I wanted to try to rename it into something I could understand so I could move on in my life. And I thought, what? We're always doing that. We're always feeling something and running to somebody. Can you diagnose it? Can you tell me what it is so it'll go away? Once it has a name, I have something to do with it. Instead of just saying, I've got a pain. I feel a little queasy. And just being with it, knowing this too is passing through. Not naming it, not holding on to it, not harboring it forever. It is in the very center of our being, Ernest Holmes reminds us, that there is an awareness that there is something that we ought to be able to tune into, something in the center of our own being. And in those moments when we're in deep agony or pain or hurt, sadness, grief, we don't try to go away. We don't try to go anywhere. We just stay very present. And if it's grief that you're in, we cry and we weep and we wail until the last tear falls. And then what emerges is the light and the truth and the confidence of that which we believe in, that the one love is always present, that we are never abandoned, never alone. And we recognize the eternality of our soul, and we look at everything that we built our framework of our life on, the truth, not all the little ideas that cause us suffering. So we go into that center of our being and we make ourselves whole. We can believe this. And sometimes in those moments when we think it doesn't apply to us, we stop right there and we turn to that part of ourselves that doubts. And we say, yes, it does apply to me because we're all one. I believe it for each one of you out there. Do you believe it for me? We need to hear that to each other. We need to remind each other of the light and the truth that dwells within each one of us. And we act as if it's so. And we keep turning from the mind of doubt, the mind of wimpiness, the Eeyore mind. We turn from and say, that is not the truth. And I have a life to live. And that life is God's life. And that life is my life now. It's such a beautiful affirmation of truth that Ernest Holmes sings throughout his textbook. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is my life now. Say that with me. There's only one life. Mary, what is it?
There's
There's only one life.
That life is God's.
That life is God's life.
That life is perfect.
That life is perfect.
And that life is my life
And that life is
now.
my life now. Isn't it wonderful that I can be up here and be so imperfect? And then I can turn to God. And I say it again, God. Say it again, God. And I'm willing to be up here and be clumsy. I'm willing to flutter through my papers because I love and I care about God and I care about you. And I care about showing you the moments of imperfection, of clumsiness. Because I don't want to give you a formula that you walk away with and you just, put it up on your shelf and say, I'm going to read that again, or I'll take a look at that later. I want you to go out of here and say, oh my God, I need to know what I believe, and I need to believe it now. That there's only one life, and that life is God's life, and that life is perfect. And you recognize how you can displace all the false ideas, all the false self, all the many ways we have frameworked a personality. It's fun to have one, but it's not the truth of who you are. There's another story about the explorer. The explorer returned to his people who were eager to know about the Amazon. But how could he ever put into words the feelings that flooded his heart when he saw the exotic flowers and heard the night sounds of the forest, when he sensed the dangers of the wild beast, or paddled his canoe over the treacherous rapids? And so when his people asked, do tell us all about this, he said, go and find out for yourselves. To guide them, he drew a map on the river, and he drew it exactly every area of that river. He framed it in such a way that they would know every turn, every place of beauty. But you know what they did with that? They just pounced on it. They took that map and they framed it in the town hall, and they made copies for themselves. And all who had a copy considered themselves now the expert on the river. For they did not know its every turn and bend, how broad it was and how deep, where the rapids were and where the falls were. You see, what I'm pointing to is Mary and I can speak up here. We can take you to classes. We can show you all the beautiful texts in the world, but until you put it to practice, until you take the journey and go to the river yourself and find it and discover and come back and say, it is a mystery. It is so incredibly awesome. How do I describe this? And then you recognize why the Buddha never really speaks of God. It's indescribable. It's indescribable because it dwells within you as you. And the light and the truth of this teaching is just inviting you always, always to turn to the beloved, to turn within, and to believe. And then when you're established into that belief of absolute knowing, you can feel it. You close your eyes. It is done unto me as I believe. And if the words of doubt begin to pinch your soul, you take a deeper breath and you dive down deep, deep into the soul that knows. And you accept what you find there, because it is the truth that carries you home. And I love that idea of the explorer, because it's not believing in yourself, but you're believing in what somebody else wrote, or you're believing in what somebody else told you about yourself. The small voices of our upbringing, let them go. Because who you are has defined you in such a way that you have showed up here in a place of truth, in a place of love. And it's a place where we're asking you to speak to that false self. That is what the entire textbook keeps pointing to. It reminds you of just love and law, and all the classes are unfolding and taking you by the hand and saying, will you please do the work and look deeply into yourself? and believe in who you are and what you see there. You want to learn in such a way that this false image, that we no longer cling to what we think we know or don't know, because that blocks our deeper knowing. We gently let go of everything. It's very gentle. There's no force. We're not slaying it, we're simply seeing it as a passing through. So it's kind of a play now when you're out in the world and you have a doubt, you have an insecurity that crops up, you have a moment of, oh, what do I do here? Know, just know that there's a power moving through you that does know. And get thee behind me any doubt. Let it pass through gently, let it flow. Experience that great spaciousness. It's why we like to go on vacation, doesn't it? Because there's spaciousness there. We're not locked into our roles of who we are. We recognize that there's something very beautiful to believe in. To believe in the one truth, the one love that is you, as you. So I want to take you into a treatment now that supports this truth. So I put away the words. I put away all the papers. And I breathe with you. For we are one. In the pause, do not question. Just be. I'm inviting you into the spaciousness, into the absolute, into the presence, into the one. Let us not hurry by. Let us even sit within patience, wondering what word will come next. You see, as we drop deep into the presence of the one, it fills our whole being. And we breathe a deeper breath. And we recognize, indeed, we are connected to the one. God is, I am. I accept. I give thanks. And in this knowing, this simple knowing, from this moment forth, I truly believe that it is done unto me as I believe. So I accept the good with gratitude and peace in my heart. I recognize there is no longer a struggle. God is, I am, I accept, I give thanks, and together we say, and so it is. So thank you for